The hall was quiet in the way old places always are, carrying the memory of footsteps long gone. Candlelight clung to the stone walls, trembling slightly as if it felt what she felt. Her breath came shallow. Every sound seemed louder than it should have been. The soft scrape of boots somewhere behind her, the weight of a promise she never wanted to make. The vampire king sat on his throne like a shadow that had learned how to breathe. He was still, almost too still, silver hair falling loose over his shoulders, hands resting calmly on the arms of the chair. His presence filled the room without effort, not with threat but with gravity. People said power looked like fire. In him, it looked like restraint. She felt the pull of the bond before she felt his eyes. Chosen mates were not gentle things. They were rules written into blood. Once claimed, there was no arguing, no leaving. She had been running from that truth for weeks, pretending courage was something you could borrow from tomorrow. The sound behind her came closer. She turned, panic breaking through her careful control, and made the only decision her fear could reach. She crossed the space between herself and the throne and sat on the vampire king's lap. The world seemed to stop breathing. Her body stiffened the moment she realized what she had done. The warmth beneath her was real, steady. His arm lifted instinctively, not to pull her closer, but to keep her from falling. There was no sudden grip, no claiming touch. Only balance, only care. The man behind her froze. Everyone knew the rules. No one touched what belonged to the king, and no one sat where she sat unless invited. She expected anger. She expected the cold snap of command. Instead, she heard his voice near her ear, low and calm, like a promise spoken to himself. I won't let him touch you. Those words did not carry possession. They carried protection. She swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the floor, heart pounding so loud she was sure the whole hall could hear it. She had meant to use him as a shield. She had not expected him to become one. The chosen mate stepped forward, his presence sharp, impatient. The bond between them pulled at her chest, painful now, like something trying to tear loose. She is mine, the man said, his voice tight with entitlement. The vampire king did not raise his voice. He did not even look at him at first. His hand rested lightly at her back, not claiming, not demanding, just there. Oh, she is afraid, the king said softly, and fear is not consent. The words fell into the room like quiet thunder. No one argued with the vampire king about law. No one corrected him about ancient bonds. Yet there he was, doing exactly that, not with force, but with reason. She felt something inside her loosen, not the bond, something deeper, something human. The king finally lifted his gaze. His eyes were old, older than the walls around them, but there was no cruelty in them. Only patience and something else she did not expect to see in a ruler feared across kingdoms. Concerned. Leave, he told the chosen mate, not as an order shouted across the room, but as a line drawn in calm certainty. The man hesitated, power tempted defiance. Pride whispered foolish courage, but the king did not move, he did not need to, the silence did the work for him. After a long moment, the chosen mate stepped back. His eyes lingered on her with anger and disbelief, then he turned and left the hall, his footsteps fading into the stone corridors. Only then did the tension truly break. Her breath came out in a shaky rush. She realized she was trembling. The vampire king felt it immediately. His hand adjusted, still careful, still respectful. Oh, you can stand if you wish, he said quietly. You owe me nothing. She did not move. Not because she wanted to stay, but because for the first time in weeks, her body felt safe enough to stop running. I didn't know where else to go, she whispered, shame burning in her throat. I didn't mean to disrespect you. His response was not what she expected. Oh, you came to the one place you believed could protect you, he said. That is not disrespect, that is trust. Oh, trust. The word settled heavily between them. She finally looked at him then, really looked. The stories had painted him as cold, ruthless, untouchable. What she saw instead was restraint held so carefully it almost hurt to witness. a king who carried power like a burden, not a prize. Everyone says you don't interfere, she said, that you let fate do what it wants. A faint, sad smile touched his lips. People say many things, he replied. Most of them are easier than the truth. His gaze softened further, and for a moment she felt like he was seeing more than her fear, as if he could see every choice that had led her here, every small act of courage it took just to keep breathing. The bond will not disappear, he continued gently, but neither will your will, and that matters more than the world admits. Her chest tightened. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not as property, not as destiny, but as a person. She shifted slightly, preparing to stand, suddenly aware of the closeness between them. The air felt charged now, not with danger, but with something unspoken. His hand remained steady. Then he said something that changed everything. If you stay, he murmured, you will be choosing your own path, not hiding from him, not hiding behind me. Her heart stumbled. I'll stay. The word echoed in her mind, heavy with possibility and risk. Staying meant defying ancient law. Staying meant standing beside a king who had just broken silence for her sake. Staying meant facing consequences neither of them could fully see. She felt the bond tug again, angry now, demanding. And beneath her, she felt the vampire king's breath slow, controlled, as if he were holding himself back from something far more dangerous than power. She had used him to escape a fate she feared. But now she was faced with a different choice. And as she lifted her head to answer, the hall seemed to lean in, waiting. Because whatever she said next would not just decide where she sat. It would decide who she became. And whether the vampire king would have to pay a price he had spent centuries trying to avoid. She did not answer him right away. Silence stretched between them, thick and alive, filled with everything she was afraid to say out loud. The hall felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves were listening. Candle flames laned and steadied again. Somewhere far away, a door closed. The world kept moving, but her moment did not. As she slowly rose from his lap, the vampire king did not move to stop her. He gave her space the way only someone truly powerful knows how to give it. When she stood in front of him, her hands clasped tightly together, he tilted his head slightly, inviting honesty without demanding it. I don't want to hide, she said at last. Her voice trembled, but the words were clear. But I don't know how to fight something that was decided before I was born. He stood then, the motion was unhurried, deliberate. Up close, his presence was overwhelming, not because of fear, but because of control. Centuries of strength held behind quiet eyes. When he looked down at her, there was no hunger there. No claim, only attention. Fate is loud, he said. It likes to pretend it is the only voice. He stepped past her, gesturing gently toward the long corridor that led away from the throne room. Guards watched from a distance, unsure, careful. They had never seen him walk beside someone like this. Not a queen, not a noble. Someone ordinary, carrying fear like a second skin. Walk with me, he said. They moved through the castle slowly. Stone arches passed above them. Moonlight slipped in through tall windows, painting pale shapes on the floor. She felt exposed, certain every whisper in the walls was about her, yet no one stopped them. No one questioned him. Your chosen mate will not give up easily, the king continued. The bond feeds pride as much as desire. He will say you are confused, that you are under my influence. She laughed softly, a broken sound. I wish fear looked that powerful. He glanced at her then, just briefly. Fear kept you alive, do not shame it. Those words settled deep. No one had ever honored her fear before. They had only told her to be braver, quieter, grateful. They reached a balcony overlooking the inner courtyard. The night air was cool. Below them, fountains whispered, steady and patient. She leaned against the stone railing, finally allowing herself to breathe fully. Why did you help me? She asked. You could have stayed silent. Everyone expects you to. His hands rested on the railing beside hers, not touching. close enough to feel his warmth, far enough to respect the space she still needed. Because once, he said slowly, I watched someone sit where they did not want to be, and I said nothing. She turned to him. What happened to them? His jaw tightened just slightly, the smallest crack in his calm. They learned how to survive, he said, but they never learned how to live. The weight of that answer pressed into her chest. She realized then that his compassion did not come from softness, it came from regret. Before she could respond, pain flared suddenly in her ribs, sharp and hot. She gasped, gripping the stone. The bond pulled hard now, furious, demanding obedience. He was there instantly, not touching, but close enough to shield her from falling. He's calling you, the king said quietly. She nodded through clenched teeth. He knows. Yes, he said, and now he will come. Fear rushed back thick and cold. Then I shouldn't stay. I didn't mean to drag you into this. His eyes darkened, not with anger, but resolve. You did not drag me. I stepped forward. The wind shifted. Somewhere below, footsteps echoed into the courtyard. Voices followed, tense, purposeful. The king straightened, every trace of gentleness folding back into command, though his voice remained calm. You still have a choice, he said. You can leave this place tonight. I will make sure no one stops you. She looked at him, really looked, the king who had broken silence, the man who had offered protection without ownership, the loneliness hidden behind centuries of restraint. And for the first time, she understood the cost of his kindness. And if I stay, she asked softly. His answer was honest, too honest to be comforting. Then the bond will challenge my authority, he said, and the court will question why I care. The footsteps below grew louder. She closed her eyes, heart pounding, knowing that whatever she chose next would change not just her fate but his. And as the first figure stepped into the light of the courtyard, she took a breath and reached for the king's hand. Not to hide, but to stand. And the moment her fingers touched his, the castle seemed to hold its breath. Her hand in his did not feel forbidden. It felt steady. The vampire king did not tighten his grip. He did not pull her closer. He simply let his palm remain open, a quiet agreement rather than a command. Yet that single gesture sent a ripple through the courtyard below. Voices fell silent, eyes lifted. The chosen mate stepped forward into the moonlight. He looked certain of himself, wrapped in the confidence of ancient law. The bond between him and her pulsed sharply now, insistent, like a hand closing around her ribs. You are out of place, he said, his gaze never leaving her. This ends now. She felt the old instinct rise, the urge to apologize for existing, to smooth the moment by surrendering. Her fingers twitched. The vampire king spoke before she could. Oh, she stands where she chooses, he said. His voice was calm, but it carried across stone and air, settling into every corner of the court. Not raised, not forced, simply present. The chosen mate's jaw tightened. You challenge the bond. No, the king replied. I challenge your certainty. A murmur spread among the gathered court. Centuries of tradition stirred uneasily. No one had ever heard him speak like this. He had enforced law for ages, not questioned it. She realized then what he was risking. Not power, not reputation, but the fragile peace that rested on his restraint. Pain flared again, sharper this time. She gasped, bending slightly as the bond pulled harder, angry at resistance. Before she could steady herself, the king moved, not to claim her, but to block the line of sight between her and the chosen mate. Look at me, he said quietly. His voice cut through the pain like cool water. She did as he asked, focusing on his eyes, on the stillness there. Breathe, he continued. The bond feeds on panic. Do not give it that gift. She inhaled slowly, then again. The pain did not vanish, but it dulled, no longer owning her entire body. The court watched in stunned silence. This was not dominance. This was guidance. The chosen mate laughed, short and sharp. You teach her tricks and call it mercy, but she belongs to me." The word landed heavily, belongs. The king's expression changed then, not into rage, into something quieter and far more dangerous. "Oh, she is not a thing," he said, "and neither is fate." He turned to her, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Whatever happens next, you must speak. Silence will be taken as surrender." Her throat tightened. She had spent her life learning how to disappear. Now she was being asked to exist out loud. She looked past the king at the faces watching her, some curious, some hostile, some uncertain. She saw her future reflected in their eyes, shaped by what she did in the next few seconds. Her heart pounded, but she stepped forward. The bond screamed. "I do not choose him," she said. The words shook, but they did not break. "And I never did." A hush fell over the courtyard. The chosen mate stared at her, disbelief cracking his confidence. "You are confused. This place has twisted you." Oh, she shook her head. "Fear twisted me, not this." She felt the bond strain like something stretched too far. The pain peaked, then wavered. For the first time, it did not feel absolute. The king's hand hovered near her back, not touching, a silent reminder that she was not alone. "The law says I am yours," she continued, voice growing steadier, "but it never asked if I was willing." The court erupted into whispers. The chosen mate took a step toward her, anger burning now. "You will regret this." Before he could move another inch, the king stepped forward. "No," he said softly, "you will." The air shifted, power pressed outward, not violent but immense. The chosen mate froze, caught between instinct and reason. "You will leave," the king continued. "Not because I command it, but because if you stay, you will reveal what this bond truly is." The implication hung heavy. A bond that required force could no longer pretend to be sacred. The chosen mate's gaze flicked around the court. Support wavered, doubt crept in. After a long moment, he turned away, retreating into the shadows, his certainty fractured. When he was gone, the tension did not disappear. Instead, all eyes turned to the king. She felt it too, the shift, the unspoken question. What would he do now? The king looked at her, his voice low and honest. "This will not end tonight." She nodded, she knew that now. "The council will demand answers," he said, "and they will not be gentle." She swallowed. "Then maybe I should live before they decide for you." His gaze softened, but his words did not. "If you leave now, they will hunt you, not for justice, for example." The weight of the future pressed in on them both. She looked up at him, fear still there, but something new growing beside it. "Resolve." "Then teach me," she said quietly, "how to stand without hiding." The king held her gaze, centuries of solitude flickering in his eyes. And in that moment, he realized he had crossed a line he could never uncross. Because he wanted to say yes. And the council had already begun to gather. The council chamber smelled of old stone and colder memories. She felt it the moment she stepped inside, as if the air itself carried judgment. The ceiling arched high above them, carved with symbols of ancient laws that had outlived the people who created them. Torches burned with steady blue flame, casting long shadows that refused to stay still. The vampire king walked beside her, not ahead, not behind. It was a small choice, but everyone noticed. Council members rose slowly from their seats, robes whispering against the floor. Faces she had only heard about in stories now watched her with open calculation. She tightened her hands at her sides. The bond stirred again, restless, sensing danger. "You stand before us under protection," one elder said, voice thin and sharp. "Explain why." The king answered calmly, "Because she asked to be heard." A ripple of disapproval moved through the chamber. "The bond has spoken," another counselor said. "That should be enough." The king turned to them, eyes steady. A bond that requires fear to survive is not law, it is coercion. The word echoed. She felt her knees weaken, but she stayed standing. She reminded herself why she was here, not to be saved, to speak. Tell us, the first elder said, gaze sliding to her. Did he influence you? She met the elder's eyes. He gave me space, she said. No one else ever did. Murmurs rose, some skeptical, some thoughtful. The pain hit suddenly, sharper than before. The bond lashed out, desperate. She gasped, gripping the edge of the stone table. The chosen mate was not present, but his claim reached through distance and blood. The king reacted instantly, stepping closer, his voice low. Stay with me, breathe. His hand hovered near her arm, still not touching unless invited. That restraint spoke louder than any defense. This proves it, a counselor snapped. The bond resists interference. The king's jaw tightened, or it resists freedom. The chamber fell silent. Then the eldest council member leaned forward, eyes ancient and tired. There is an old path, he said slowly, rarely used, dangerous. She lifted her head. What path? Severance, the elder replied. Not destruction of the bond, but its trial. The bond must prove it was chosen, not forced. A fear rippled through the room. The king went very still. Severance trials kill people, one counselor said, or worse, they break them. The elder nodded, yes. Her heart raced, and if I refuse? Then the bond stands, the elder said, and you return to your chosen mate. The silence crashed down on her. She felt the king's presence beside her, controlled but tense. This was the moment he had feared, not because of the trial, but because he could not choose for her. Do not decide for me, she whispered, barely audible, not even now. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, there was something like pain there. The trial will test your will, he said softly, and mine. The elder studied them both. The king must oversee it. A sharp intake of breath swept the room. If the bond fails, the elder continued, its claim dissolves. If it succeeds, she is lost to him forever. Lost. The word hit harder than fear. She realized then that this was not just her fight. The bond was not the only thing being tested. The king's restraint, his compassion, his ability to let go. She stepped forward. I accept the trial, she said. Voices erupted, objections, warnings, disbelief. The king turned to her sharply. You do not owe them courage. She met his gaze. I owe myself truth. The council chamber quieted again. The eldest elder nodded slowly. Then it will begin at dawn. As they turned to leave, the weight of what was coming pressed into her chest. In the corridor outside, the king stopped walking. You could still run, he said. I would help you. She shook her head. Running kept me alive, standing might let me live. His expression softened, but his voice carried something heavier. The trial will hurt you. She looked at him, eyes steady. So did the bond. For the first time, he reached out and took her hand. Not as a shield, not as a king, but as someone afraid of losing something he had never meant to claim. And as dawn crept closer, both of them understood that Part 5 would demand a sacrifice neither could escape. Dawn did not arrive gently. It came pale and unforgiving, sliding through the narrow windows of the trial chamber like a quiet warning. The room was circular, carved deep beneath the castle where even sound seemed to hesitate. Old symbols marked the floor, worn smooth by centuries of feet that had walked in afraid and left changed if they left at all. She stood at the center. The stone beneath her was cold, but her palms were warm with sweat. The bond pulsed inside her like a second heartbeat, faster now, anxious, aware. This place did not belong to it. The vampire king stood at the edge of the circle. He had never hated distance the way he hated it now. The council watched from the shadows, silent, no judgment spoken aloud. The rules were older than opinion. Once the trial began, even the king's voice could not stop it. Remember, the eldest elder said quietly, this trial does not test pain, it tests truth. As she nodded, though fear pressed hard against her ribs. The symbols began to glow, faint at first, then brighter as if the stone itself was waking. Warmth crept up her legs, her breath hitched. The bond reacted instantly. Memories flooded her mind, not her own but borrowed. Moments of closeness she never chose. Hands guiding hers. Voices telling her who she was supposed to be. Promises made without her consent, wrapped in the language of destiny. As she cried out, knees buckling. The king stepped forward on instinct, stopping just short of the line etched into the floor. His hands clenched at his sides. Power surged through him, wild and furious, begging to be used. He did not cross. Stay with yourself, he said, voice tight but steady. Do not let it tell your story. She gasped, forcing her breathing to slow. She searched inside the storm for something solid, not fear, not anger. Choice. The bond tightened, pulling, demanding surrender. You are safer if you yield, a voice whispered inside her mind. Familiar, persuasive, this is how it has always been. Tears blurred her vision. Part of her wanted to believe it. Safety had always sounded like obedience. Then another memory surfaced, not from the bond. His voice in the throne room. Fear is not consent. Her spine straightened. I choose myself, she whispered. The symbols flared. Pain tore through her, sharp and searing, not as punishment, but as resistance. The bond fought back, unraveling and tightening at the same time, desperate to prove it belonged. She screamed, not in agony, but in defiance. The king felt it like a blade through his chest. He had ruled wars, buried centuries, outlived entire bloodlines. Nothing had prepared him for standing still while someone he cared for suffered because of a law he once upheld. His power surged again, dark and vast, pressing against his restraint. One step. That was all it would take. The elders shifted uneasily, sensing the pressure. Hold, the eldest warned. If you cross, the trial becomes invalid. Invalid meant the bond would stand. The king closed his eyes and did the hardest thing he had ever done. Nothing. Inside the circle, she collapsed to one knee. The bond wavered, its voice cracking, losing its smooth certainty. Oh, you need me, it hissed. Without me, you are nothing. She lifted her head, tears streaking her face, breath ragged. Without you, she said hoarsely, I am free. The symbols blazed white. A sound like glass breaking echoed through the chamber, sharp and final. The bond screamed once, then fell silent. The light faded. She slumped forward, caught by stone before she could fall completely. For a heartbeat, the room did not move. Then the eldest elder spoke, voice heavy with awe. The bond has failed. The king crossed the circle in 2 strides, catching her before she hit the ground. This time, no rule stopped him. He held her carefully, as if she were something fragile and precious, his restraint finally allowed to become tenderness. She was shaking, eyes unfocused but alive. Vray. The council stood in stunned silence. Centuries of certainty had just fractured. The king pressed his forehead briefly to hers, a gesture too intimate for the court, too human for a legend. Oh, you did it, he whispered. Her lips curved faintly, so did you. But even as relief washed through the chamber, the eldest elder's voice cut through the quiet. Freedom does not end consequence, he said. The bond is broken, but the choice you made today has awakened something older. The king looked up sharply. What have you done? He asked. The elder met his gaze. You have shown the world a king who defies fate. A dangerous example, and one that would not be forgiven easily. As she rested against him, unaware, the walls of the chamber seemed to close in. Because part 6 would not be about survival, it would be about what love costs when power finally chooses kindness the castle did not celebrate. There were no bells, no music, no speeches carved into stone. Freedom arrived quietly, the way truth often does, slipping into the world without asking permission. By nightfall, the corridors felt different. Whispers followed them, cautious now uncertain. The kind of silence that comes when old rules realize they are no longer invisible. She woke in a small chamber overlooking the eastern gardens. Moonlight rested gently on the floor. The pain from the trial had faded into a deep, tired ache, the kind that comes after something finally lets go. For the first time in her life, her chest felt empty in a way that did not hurt. The bond was gone. She sat up slowly, testing the truth of it. No pull, no voice, no pressure telling her where she belonged. Just herself. The door opened softly. The vampire king stepped inside, moving as if the room might shatter if he was careless. He looked different now, not weaker, exposed, centuries of distance stripped away by one choice he could never undo. They are already arguing, he said quietly. Some want me removed, others want the trial erased from history. She smiled faintly. They always do. He studied her, relief flickering through his control. How do you feel? She searched for the answer. Light, she said, and scared, but it feels honest. Well, he nodded. Honesty tends to be. He moved closer, stopping a careful distance away, still asking without words. Oh, you didn't have to stay, she said. You could have blamed the council, said your hands were tied. His gaze did not leave hers. I did that once, long ago. I promised myself I would not do it again. Silence settled between them, warm and heavy. The court believes you are here because of me, she continued. They think I influence you. He almost smiled. They are afraid because you reminded them I am capable of choosing. The truth of that sat quietly between them. She stood, crossing the space herself this time. The air felt charged, not with danger, but with care. What happens now? She asked. He answered honestly, now I step down. The words landed softly, but they changed everything. Her breath caught, you're giving up the thrones. Not power, he said, only the silence. The throne was built on obedience to fate. I can no longer sit on it without lying. She looked at him, heart aching with admiration and fear. They'll never stop watching you. Good, he said, perhaps they'll learn something. Outside, dawn began to stretch across the sky, pale gold touching stone and leaf alike. The world was still the same, and yet it was. You're free, he said gently. You owe no one a future, not even me. She felt the weight of that gift. True freedom did not demand a return, it simply opened a door. She took his hand. Not to hide, not to escape. To choose. I don't know what love is supposed to look like, she said softly, but I know what respect feels like, and I know what kindness costs. His fingers tightened slightly around hers, careful, reverent. Then walk with me, he said, not as king and subject, not as fate and rebellion, just as two people who survived. They left the chamber together. Later, the council would argue. Histories would be rewritten. Some would call him weak, others would call him dangerous, but stories have a way of choosing their own endings. In the gardens, as sunlight finally broke through the night, she paused and looked back at the castle that had tried to decide her life. It no longer owned her. The vampire king stood beside her, no crown, no command in his voice, only presence. And for the first time in centuries, he was not alone. Because true power was never in ruling others. It was in refusing to touch what was never freely given, and choosing love when no law required it.